The hum of the server racks was my constant companion, a steady, low thrum against the backdrop of their boisterous celebrations. While Mark and Sarah clinked glasses and shouted about disruption, I was typically hunched over my monitor, deep within the intricate lattice of code, meticulously weaving the very complex operational systems that powered their grand pronouncements. My workspace, tucked away in the quietest corner, became a sanctuary of focused creation. Every line of architecture, every operational blueprint, was conceived and perfected by my hands. They built a brand. I built the engine. My days were a drone-like ballet of duty, each critical contribution absorbed into the company's identity, yet my own name rarely surfaced. Their marketing talked about innovation, but the core intellectual property, the very DNA of our product, originated solely from my late nights and early mornings. The ultimate irony, and the deepest cut, was discovering how little that foundational work had translated into a fair share of the equity, or even the public recognition rightfully mine. The email arrived at 4:57 p.m. on a Friday. Not even a call. A 2-page PDF was attached, detailing a severance package that amounted to 4 weeks' pay, conditional on signing a full non-disclosure and a 2-year non-compete for a company I was supposedly no longer valuable to. My tenure, my contributions, the strategic pivots I'd spearheaded, all neatly redacted into an HR memo, delivered with the casual disregard of an automated bill. This wasn't just being sidelined, it was an official declaration of my expendability. A profound stillness settled within me, a quiet devastation that sharply contrasted with the external chaos I imagined they were celebrating. They, blinded by their ambition or casual oversight, genuinely perceived me as a convenient resource that had simply run its course. They saw a line item. I felt a seismic shift. Yet, there was no storm of tears, no outburst. Instead, a cold, crystalline clarity emerged from the disbelief. My hands didn't shake, my gaze didn't waver. The paperwork lay untouched, a symbol of their closing a door they thought was mine. But it was only the beginning of my reevaluation, not my emotional reaction, and the echo of my erased contributions resonated louder than any silence they imposed. They talked about the new vision and fresh direction, as if the very ground beneath their feet hadn't been laid by my own hands, meticulously, brick by quiet brick. While they hosted grand launch parties for initiatives I designed years prior, I remembered the countless evenings spent hunched over CAD files, refining what I then called the Blueprint, a system for supply chain optimization that slashed lead times by 18% in its first quarter alone, a benchmark they still proudly cited. This wasn't merely a job, it was a life of quiet duty. 18 years where my unwavering loyalty translated into early mornings in a frigid warehouse, troubleshooting a critical logistics bottleneck, or late nights perfecting the pitch deck for our biggest client acquisition to date. I was the silent engine, anticipating every need, sketching out solutions, building the very scaffolding that held their grand ambitions aloft. They now celebrated their proprietary software, oblivious or perhaps willfully ignorant that every line of its core architecture stemmed from my initial flowcharts, developed in 2007, then refined in the quiet hum of my home office while everyone else slept. My name never appeared on the patents or the press releases, yet my uncompensated hours and strategic insights were the invisible ink on every success story they now claimed. The robust digital infrastructure, the streamlined operational processes, the entire framework supporting their current valuation, all rooted in my unacknowledged labor. As they pointedly excluded me from meetings about our future, the true scale of what I had quietly given and what they had casually taken settled into a cold certainty. The Blueprint wasn't just times at times part of the company. At times was times the company itself. The quiet over my house wasn't emptiness. It was the profound hush before a storm of my own making. Quiet contemplation gave way to potent resolve. The initial overwhelming feelings of betrayal, once a shapeless fog, condensed into a crisp, clear blueprint. I focused on precision, channeling every ounce of being wronged into a structured, step-by-step counterplan for reclaiming ownership and undeniable recognition. This was calm power in motion. My first calls were not for sympathy, but for strategy. An incisive intellectual property attorney in Los Angeles and a forensic financial analyst recommended for unearthing hidden value became my initial consultants. They outlined a multifaceted path, daunting yet actionable. Initial retainers weren't cheap. $5,000 upfront for the IP lawyer's preliminary research, and $3,000 for the financial analyst to audit accounts. These weren't expenses. They were calculated investments in my future, the first solid bricks of my new foundation. They explained realistic timelines, weeks for thorough copyright searches, days for bank transfer clearances, yet each delay was another opportunity to gather crucial evidence. I began a meticulous inventory of every email, text, and meeting note related to the project, categorizing them like precious artifacts. Identified vulnerabilities became my leverage. The game was no longer about chaotic emotion. It was about strategic control, turning their oversight into my overwhelming advantage. If you've ever felt invisible, what was the moment you decided to take back control? The blueprint wasn't just a concept anymore. It was a living document, evolving across months of surgical execution. While their social media profiles continued to churn out boastful updates and thinly veiled digs, my silence became a precise, powerful tool. I methodically backed up every incriminating email exchange, each screenshot carefully timestamped, and cross-referenced every suspicious transaction in the company's books with my own forensic spreadsheets. One particular June 2022 invoice showing a payment of $48,750 to a shell company I'd never heard of stood out, a glaring discrepancy. By early September, I'd filed the trademark application for Ethel Incorporated with the USPTO and completed its corporate registration in Delaware, all quietly, efficiently. My private investigator, Elias, delivered weekly reports detailing their accumulating misdealings, from dubious vendor kickbacks to undisclosed conflicts of interest. Their sloppiness was a goldmine, a stark contrast to their polished public facade, yet they remained blissfully oblivious, consumed by their perceived victory. But the real game changer wasn't in their current indiscretions, it was in their past oversight. Sifting through archaic files one rainy afternoon, my fingers traced dusty ledgers until I stumbled upon a 2017 partnership agreement buried deep in an old archive box. Article 9.3. A seemingly innocuous clause about intellectual property reversion upon a specific type of dissolution proved to be my ace. It was a detail they'd long forgotten, but one that rendered all their present bluster utterly moot. Their noise was their undoing. My quiet, deliberate work, the precise architect of theirs. The quiet hum of my newly rerouted affairs felt almost too peaceful, a stark contrast to the subtle vibrations I knew were starting across town. The first ripple, as I'd anticipated, came 2 weeks later, a seemingly innocuous email from the county zoning office. It cited incomplete documentation for the new commercial park permits, a project critical to Mark's expansion. He'd initially brushed it off as bureaucratic red tape, grumbling about overzealous clerks. Yet the following Monday, an unexpected audit notification arrived from the Department of Commerce requesting an entire year's worth of supplier invoices for the construction arm. Sarah, ever the pragmatist, tried to explain it away as a random check, but I knew the difference between random and targeted. Their usual chaotic bluster was now laced with an underlying tension. The initial dismissive scoffs gave way to hushed, frustrated phone calls, their voices sharper, less confident. They saw minor frictions. I saw the foundation beginning to shift beneath their feet, quiet but relentless. It was only a matter of time before they realized the architect of this newfound instability. My quiet satisfaction sharpened into anticipation as their predictable backlash began. Confusion escalated into frantic emails and veiled threats, culminating in a cease and desist letter from their counsel, citing reputational damage. Their escalating noise only reinforced my resolve. My response wasn't a shouted defense, but a precise packet. Copies of the land sale agreement, escrow closing documents, and an audit of investment funds, all certified. As they spiraled into frenzy, each desperate maneuver met with composure, a testament to meticulous planning. Their narrative salvaging attempts were countered not with argument, but irrefutable fact. Every legal notice and financial disclosure a quiet, precise strike. Their frantic correspondence grew, but my next carefully timed move stood ready. The air in that room was thick, not with tension, but with a strange, heavy silence, the kind that precedes an irreversible truth. After months of meticulously building my case, this was the moment their noise met my undeniable facts. I walked them through it, calmly, point by painstaking point, laying out the notarized intellectual property registrations, the timestamps on my original concept documents, and the irrefutable bank transfers detailing every dollar I'd invested from my personal accounts. Their initial attempts at bluster and denial quickly deflated, replaced by the hushed rustle of legal papers. The settlement agreement, pre-drafted and reviewed by their own counsel, was unambiguous. It detailed the full transfer of all intellectual property, company shares, and outstanding financial contributions back into my sole ownership. They had expected a battle. I delivered a binding resolution. As they pushed the final documents across the polished mahogany table, their expressions a mix of anger and defeat, I met their gaze directly. "You saw a drone?" I stated, my voice steady. "I saw the entire ecosystem, and now the blueprint is mine." The signatures were witnessed. The documents immediately filed with the Secretary of State, instantly updating the public record. The transfer was irreversible, effective immediately, leaving no room for argument or appeal. It wasn't revenge. It was the quiet, precise reclamation of what was always mine. What chapter are you ready to write next?